Welcome to the panel. I am Ralph Lewis, and tonight our special guest is none other than the Honorable Minister for Tourism and Transportation, Kenneth Bryan, the MP for Georgetown Central. Mr. Bryan has been at the forefront of the efforts of PAC government to reopen and revitalize the economy following the recession that Cayman has suffered in the pandemic. A passionate advocate for ensuring that Caymanians are properly represented through the economy, Mr. Bryan has been championing a drive to ensure that Caymanians have first call on job vacancies. He has also been pushing to train and reskill workers to ensure that they're adequately equipped and qualified to take on various roles, especially in the tourism industry. And he has also put his energies into encouraging residents to get vaccinated against COVID-19. The vaccination drive has become even more urgent with a new Omicron variant now posing a serious threat to public health globally and could represent a real challenge to efforts to revitalize our economy. Mr. Bryan is also the Minister for Tourism, another demanding role. Recently, we saw him successfully snatch Mr. Dwayne Seymour from the opposition benches to assist him with that portfolio and others in the government. Perhaps that bit of political maneuvering was down to Mr. Bryan's communication skills, given his background in media. In this edition of the panel, though, we'll be looking mainly at tourism, the reopening of the economy, and especially issues surrounding jobs for Caymanians. Welcome to the panel, Mr. Bryan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lewis. It really is a pleasure to be here, Ralph. First time on the show, but I'm excited about it. I think this type of show is so necessary for us to get down to the nooks of things and talk about the details of how this all works for our country and the many topics that you speak about. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bryan. And also, I'd like to welcome my co-host, Mr. Roy Bodden. Before we get into your update on the reopening, briefly tell us how you made the transition from journalist to Minister of Tourism.
Well, it's a pretty obvious one. It's quite simple. I became a journalist because of my outgoing personality, and in media, you want to be a person who's personable and not afraid of cameras. So cameras don't make me nervous that much. At least it doesn't anymore. And as I had the opportunity to be in news, you cover so many different things, from politics to social life to business to entertainment. And what I had an opportunity to do is have a say and an opinion on many of the things that faced our country. And being my mother's son, I was a person to say that this has to change. So after a number of years in the industry, I couldn't handle it anymore by seeing the many things that troubled my people. And I said, let me throw my hat in the ring. When I saw great people like Dr. Roy Bodden and many others who were in there, who did their part, I figured that this is my time to do my part, as I think I had a lot to offer. And thankfully, to the people of the Georgetown Central and the greater community of the Cayman Islands, I was given that opportunity in 2017. Here I am today now as a Minister of Tourism, hopefully to continue that journey.
Thank you. And I remember those days when actually, when I started out this, my newspaper, Caymanian Times, actually watching you in those press briefings, I'm like, when will I get to talk like Kenneth? But I'm getting there. Not there yet, but I'm getting there. Okay. Thank you very much, Kenneth.
You're doing an amazing job. Don't worry.
Thank you, my friend. Okay. How is the reopening going so far? And what's the outlook for Christmas and the tourism season as that impacts economy, business, and jobs?
Things are going well. We did our reopening in phase 4 of 5 phases on November the 20th, as most people know. And things are going well as we focus the number one priority being that of safety, both for a national perspective as well as a visitor perspective. Last week, we were happy to welcome Air Canada back. Another airline has committed to us and came with a full flight from Toronto, so we're pleased about that. And since the 20th of November to the last stats I've calculated was December the 5th, which was a Sunday, and we had 5,781 persons coming in. And of that, 2,532 have been visitors, specific visitors. So we're happy the numbers are growing, and I think there are a lot more now because from Sunday till today, Thursday, I'm quite sure the numbers are reaching between about 7,000. So we're slowly growing well, but the main focus is going to have to be on continuing to add those flights necessary to help bring back the visitors. They're such a key component to making sure people get here. And as you know, we have Air Canada, British Airways, Cayman Airways, as well as JetBlue with their flights from Boston, New York, Fort Lauderdale, and Cayman Airways goes to Tampa, Jamaica, Honduras, and Cuba. British Airways brings us the whole European link, and Air Canada, obviously, for Canada by way of Toronto. But we're really looking forward to the first quarter of next year, where we'll start to see back some of those original big ticket airlines, not saying that the ones before are not, but some of the ones that are heavy influencers in the American market, like airlines like Delta, United, and American, and Southwest. So they all come back in the first quarter of next year. Unfortunately, the industry is having a lot of problems with crew capacity and having them accessible with the corona pandemic. So we had most of it scheduled for our first original opening, which was the 14th of October, with the cancellation or the delay of that reopening caused them to have to move their crews to other places, which made it difficult for them to come back any earlier. This is the crew shortage. But I'm happy to say that in the early part of next year, say for instance, United has come back in February, American Airlines is coming back in March, as well as in April. In January, Cayman Airways will be continuing their normal flights, but they were also going to New York on the 16th of December. So we're really excited. Places and gateways like Newark, Washington, Houston, Chicago, Denver, Colorado, all of these places that we used to go before, Philadelphia, Dallas, all those places will be back on the agenda, which will bring a lot of people back into our efforts. One of the key focuses that we want to deal with is getting our projections of 40% of the 2019 numbers back within the next year. So we budgeted ourselves to make revenues for about 40% of what we did before. So my expectation is that the minimum 40%, and that 40% is comparison to half a million persons in 2019. So we're shooting for about 200,000 people in the 2022 year, and anything over that would be icing on the cake. So that's our focus for now, and I think we're well on our way, starting good.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roy, want to jump in here with any questions, Mr. Brian?
I just wanted to ask, how confident is the minister that, given this challenge with COVID, particularly with the new strain, how confident is the minister that we are going to be able to handle these increased numbers without a setback? Setback being having to go back into some kind of lockdown protocol or reduction in activities protocols.
Well, with the government's careful, slow, and steady steps in focusing on safety first, we think that we can make the necessary adjustments in respect to the protocols, that we would never have to go into lockdown. I don't think that that any country will ever go back into a full lockdown again, like once before, even with these new variants. What you do is you tighten your measures to control it better, but you still need to allow the flow of traffic and travel for the international market, not only for business, but for tourism as well. So as long as we continue our efforts with the travelers and letting them know what our protocols are, continue to market and communicate with them, we can still allow the flow. Now, can I say that something may not happen? It may, but we're focused on staying on the plan of what the advice say from the medical fraternities, and things look positive, even in the face of Omicron. We keep like, even tomorrow morning we have an update presented to cabinet and to myself as Minister for Tourism on how we handle that. So safety is the #1 priority for us, and I think that with our main source market being the America, focusing on safety as well, things should be just fine.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. I have a follow-up question, and that concerns cruise tourism, because I believe And certainly I gleaned from the evidence that cruise tourism carries a greater risk than aircraft passengers. Recently, I was reading about an experiment, I think it was Norwegian Caribbean Lines, and an outbreak of about 10, so that the cruise had to be canceled because the ship left port, but there was an outbreak of 10 coronavirus cases and they decided to abandon that. I see where sometimes in the spring, we are going to go into cruise tourism. How prepared are we for that kind of risk?
Well, as prepared as we'll ever be in respect to it. One thing we've been doing is following the industry well and watching what they're doing, because safety is our number one priority. As you may have heard in my delivery in Parliament, I've just approved a cruise ship, Holland America, to come on December the 28th of this year, which is 3 days before the new year starts. And the purpose for that is for us to test the waters, to make sure that we can iron out any kinks in respect to safety protocols, and making sure that we're prepared before we start to add cruise back into our industry or tourism product again in the first quarter of next year, as you mentioned. Now, that approval was based on some specific strategic agreements with that cruise line. So we asked them to make sure that they can meet some protocols, and they've met those protocols, hence the reason why we approved it. And those protocols were 7 main points. One, that Grand Cayman be the first port of call. And the logic behind that from a safety standpoint is that persons, before they come on the ship, will have to first off be vaccinated, as well as get the PCR test before they get on the ship, before they embark on the ship. Now, the ship will call within a 24-hour period and get to Grand Cayman. So that period of anything happening is very, very short, as well as they just had a PCR test before they came on the boat, or antigen test. So for some opportunity for a leakage within the cruise, even though you're vaccinated, you can still get corona, but the testing had been done just hours before they arrived to the Cayman Islands, as well as the call would only be for 8 hours when they come to Grand Cayman. Another criteria that we put in place is that a maximum of 60% of your capacity on your ship can come. The reason for that, we dictate that they space the passengers out, which is a less chance of spread within the ship. All guests has to be fully vaccinated, and the crew, in order for them to call here. All persons have to take a PCR antigen test right before they get on the ship. All guests and crews who will come on shore have to abide by our protocols with mask wearing and social distancing. And the number one priority is no guest who is unwell can come aboard. So we believe that with us being the first protocol, first point, our first port to go to, that we minimize the risk. As per if we were the third destination where they stopped in a country that has COVID, got back on the ship, go again, they jumped off another country, get back on the ship, and then if Cayman was the third port of call, the risk levels increase tenfold. Hence the reason, if anybody else in the new year can meet these criterias, unless the pandemic itself and the parameters of safety change, they would have to meet these protocols in order to come to the Cayman Islands. So we feel that it's safe enough. The program board, which includes our medical health supervisors like Dr. Lee and Dr. Williams, have given their blessings and seen that the risk is exactly the same as the risk of persons coming on a plane right before that are vaccinated before they get here and don't have to go into quarantine. Matter of fact, the risk levels are lower than those who stay over because they don't get tested until day 2. These persons are going back within 8 hours and they've met the same protocols of testing before. But I want to say this, cruise is a very important part of our tourism products. And I know that there's a lot of reservation about cruise, and rightfully so. They've affected our social life, our attractions, our natural habitats. But one of the good things about doing this test run is because I intend to remodel and reshape our cruise tourism industry, where we can start focusing on quality over quantity, which means potentially less bigger ships smaller ships with higher quality passengers who have a higher spend. So for example, you can, if you're a boat captain, you take people to Stingray City, you normally take 25 people. I'll say if you
Yes.
take 12, because we're going to increase the costing mandate with the cruise lines, that if you used to sell it for $50 before, that will now be 100 at the same with half of the other people, and you still make the same money. Because I know that there's a sentiment that cruise is not the best for this island. And I may somewhat disagree. It's a key component where many Caymanians have invested much of their savings, and they make a living off of that, and they provide for their families. What we have to do is make sure that it benefits Caymanians better, so we don't need to have more and more and more and still have the same value. So we're going to be transforming that. That's the whole purpose of this test run. How do we have our relationship with our stakeholders, our Cayman business owners, and the cruise ship? So I've made them aware that we are going to be transforming this. Expect to have better negotiations where the stakeholders and business owners here on island get more of the pie. Because what we found based on the studies and by many representations of stakeholders is they do all the work. They make the customer get all the Caymanian experiences, and they get a small little piece of the pie. And we want to change that. And therefore, if we change that with a bigger piece of the pie, we can have less people and get the same outcome. And that means less pressure on our infrastructure, less pressure on our beaches and our national attractions, as well as Cayman environment as a whole.
And may I ask, have you got the buy-in of the Cayman Islands Tourism Association on this?
Well, they definitely haven't said no to it. And I'm happy to say that the deputy president, I think it's the deputy president, who is a Caymanian, and I'm proud to say that, has reached out to say he's excited to help develop what this reform will look like. So we have appointments made for us to be a part. He wants to be a part of a steering committee that we're developing to help reform that. And Dr. Roy, I'm so happy that you're on, because I know that's something that you have been interested or have studied and spoken on tremendously, which is unions. And I think that in order for us to do the goal and the dream that I have, there has to be an element or structure of some sort similar to that of a union, without all the negative connotations that come with union, where the stakeholders locally work together and stick together. Because once they stick together and do not, bargain down each other, which is what the cruise lines depend on, is for each other to cut each other's throat, and then therefore the price keeps on going down and they make more of the pie. So I want to work with those stakeholders to say, listen, it's in our best interest to work together. So create some sort of association that the only way you can negotiate with the cruise line is if you're a part of this association, and the association together collectively come up with the pricing scales for any attraction, any kind of services that we offer. Therefore, we can control the amount that you make. Everybody's happy, but we don't overload our society on a large. Now that takes a lot of buy-in, but I do believe the PAC administration, along with myself, can convince them that this is in the best interest of the long-term sustainability of our country, as well as our society as a whole. We know about how many times cruise ships are in and people go, I just don't want to go downtown. It's just too, congested. We want to change that. We want to make sure that Stingray City stays around for our great grandchildren. And at the rate that we're doing it now, we're overburdening our environment and our infrastructure. And we can change that and still get the same money value.
What you said, Mr. Bryan, brings music to my ears. I believe in structure, and I think having an organization, whether you call it a union or association, to sort of organize these things, really give it the power and give the locals the power to negotiate. I have one question regarding the cruise ship. Have they accepted your conditions? And do they think that this will impact the ability to sell the number of rooms on the cruise ship for that period?
Well, I've expressed it to them from my first appointment in Parliament, appointment as minister, my apologies. One of my first things to do is to reach out to all stakeholders, hoteliers, villas, condos, the cruise ship industry, airlines. So once the government created a strategic policy direction, I sat with all of these stakeholders to say, this is the vision
Right.
of the people through their representatives. So they haven't said, oh, I'm not going to come because of this. So I can't say that they disagree with it, but I think that they have to understand and respect that this is the will of the people of the Cayman Islands.
Right.
So it's not I don't think it's something that they can not accept. Now they can choose to not call in the Cayman Islands. We don't want that. We want them to continue to enjoy our products. But what we do in the Cayman Islands is for the people of the Cayman Islands. And this is what they said they want through their representation.
And the point I'm trying to drill home is that we have to set our rules. They can't set the rules for us.
Correct.
And I think I've seen with the PAC
Correct.
government.
I didn't want to say it that way, but you're correct.
And I see the PAC government, that's the direction that they're going. And Mr. Roy has some words regarding that later on. But I thank you. The cruise industry will take a lot of time and work, and we could spend all night here discussing it. But there's one topic that is near to and dear to our heart, and one of the reasons why we actually wanted to have this discussion, and it's about employment. And the final question was, how successful have you been in placing Caymanians in the tourism industry? And that's, we will take some time and talk through it. But I want you to just sort of speak to that for us, please.
Okay, well, you're 100% correct. The PAC administration is focusing heavily on making sure that Caymanians are placed in all job markets, but particularly as the Minister for Tourism, and based on the studies and research presented to me, as well as common communication amongst our country, and you visit and you talk to passengers and visitors, they say, they don't see many Caymanians. This is something we've all heard before. But then you have reports that literally say that majority of the comments are that they don't see enough Caymanians. So that works well with the rebuilding of our tourism industry, as well as so many Caymanians unemployed, to take this opportunity to enhance and bring up the percentages of Caymanians within the industry, which is the government's focus and plan. So since in office, we've been doing a number of initiatives to ensure that is the case. And I think we're doing pretty well so far. The industry, some people seeming to be a little reluctant, but it's quite similar to the answer that you suggested in respect to the cruise lines. We are the people's representatives, and this is what they want us to do. So we're all going to have to learn to live with the new normal. And that new normal is Caymanians have to be in higher percentages in the tourism industry, and they have to be given first preference, and that is the Caymanian first policy. Now, we've been doing our part to try to assist with that. We've done surveys, particularly on those who are receiving the stipend, see which ones of them who are qualified in what areas, who are willing to go back to tourism. We've done training programs. Over 700 individuals have been trained up within this year on different aspects of the tourism industry. We have a bartending course going on right now for bartending, or food and beverage course for bartending and front of house. There's about to be completed right now. That's going on with the Cayman Wine School and Cayman Spirits Company, which we're excited to partner with them, 7 Fathoms. And we've spent close to $500,000 in training last year. And I've doubled that budget for next year, because we intend to continue to train people in the industry to make sure that they can give their services to the industry, because for far too long, the industry continues to say they're not trained and they need help. But we're going to make sure that that's no longer an excuse. And to add to that, you saw that we're doing these job fairs. We did one just today, and I'm happy to say we partnered with CETA, with the work department, which deals with all the labor matters, as well as my Ministry of Tourism. And over 200 positions were put forward today with the food and beverage and culinary, as well as beach services, pool and beach services, for people to get jobs. And in the early part of this morning, a number of people came, I think about 30 to 35 people with pre-arranged appointments. And then we had an open door later on from 1 to 4 where persons can sign up and come. And happy to say that over 234 persons requested an appointment for that period. and then we had an extra 72 people walk in on their own. And that was up until I left. So I'm not sure if we've added some more because I left around 3:30.
Yeah.
So there could be a little bit of a higher number. But this is our commitment to doing that. And we intend to do another job fair in the first quarter of next year, potentially January, if not early February, to deal with not only the food and beverage and culinary and pool and beach, but also the admin side. Persons can do accounting, can do administrative and secretarial work in the industry because everybody has to have administrative elements. So I'm happy to say that happened. Many hotels like the Ritz, Westin, Kimpton Sea Fire, Marriott, Tuca, the restaurants was Tuca, East and West, Abacus, Peru, Grand Ole House, The Wharf, Plum Point, Red Hills and Sporting, and a couple more that I can't think off the top of my head, but they were all in there. And I'm thinking that the industry is slowly starting to understand that this government is taking a Caymanian first policy very seriously. It is a change in the guard, but we have to accept this is the people's will. So until that starts to happen, unfortunately, I've heard concerns about work permits and the like, but it has to be Caymanians first. Caymanians first. Once we get by that, we'd be happy to facilitate all the necessary labor force you need. But we cannot sit around and watch our people unemployed, because the whole purpose of reopening the borders and igniting the tourism industry again is to get our people back to work. So it would be silly of the government to open the borders, take the risks that come along with opening the borders in a pandemic, and Caymanians continue to be unemployed. It's unacceptable, and it's not a part of the government's policy. So that's the way we're going with that.
Minister, I have heard you speak. I like that position, and I wish you well, because it is high time somebody needs to set the marker at the level in which you have quite adamantly set it. And I am following with interest, and I am praying for your success, because such a position is long overdue. I have, however, one question to ask in that regard. I was reading today on one of the online news services where there was a job fair, and the establishments have said that they have opened 200 positions to Caymanians. Now, I hope this is not one of those things where they are going to offer Caymanians 200 positions, but then apply for 1,000 work permits. Because I have to question, who came up with a number of 250 positions? Why did they not say, we have these openings, we're going to try to find as many Caymanians as are trained or that we can train for these positions, and those positions which are not able to be filled by Caymanians, those are the ones we are going to apply for work permits for. So it seems to me, with all due respect to the position you have taken, and I admire and encourage you to hold fast to it, that the association is up to the same old tricks. We will give the Caymanians a token amount, but we are going to bring in the majority. Now, we had Mr. Langevin here on the panel. We also had the Chamber of Commerce on the panel. We had Mr. Michael Miles from Inspire. So we know the inside, and now we have you. So we know the inside story. And I also know a fair amount because I was the chairman of the group who drew up the Hospitality Training School curriculum. It operated at UCCI's campus during the years that I was there. I left in 2018, and I thought that there was a good opportunity, and I questioned the students, and they told me how they were discouraged. There was a lot of tokenism and a lot of grand talk, but when it came to encouraging the students by employment, all kinds of obstacles and excuses were put in their way so that many of them, and I know the caliber because like I say, they were on my campus, and anybody who knows me know that I knew the campus because I walked it 2 or 3 times every day and made it my business to speak with the students and encourage them. So I am asking you, Minister, what are your plans to ensure that your objectives and the PAC's objectives when it comes to Caymanian employment in the hospitality industry, that no shenanigans are going to be carried out to give Caymanians the short shrift?
Well, Dr. Roy, first I want to say thank you so much for appreciating my approach to this. It means a lot coming from you, Dr. Roy. As you know, many of us in our junior years of Parliament look up to you tremendously. But to say that I am fully aware of those shenanigans that we talk about. So my eye is on the ball, and by all means, I'm here to stand on behalf of the people. So let's talk about some of the things that you highlighted. You highlighted, well, who came up with the 200 jobs and why is it only 200? For one, the industry did that. I'm not pleased with that figure at all. But I'm assuming the justification for the 200 figure is that we have to slowly open the borders and slowly grow within the business. So we're not going to go back to 1,000 positions available. So we have to respect that there will be only a certain amount. They're not going to go into full employment before the customers are there. So we will see with that, but also the key components to understanding how the position of the PAC administration, Caymanian First policy will work is constant monitoring. That's why the Ministry of Tourism and Work Department are partnering together, tag teaming to keep an eye on CETA. Now, I hate to use these types of terminologies because the industry have many people who have done their part and hired Caymanians. But some of the stories that you have talked about with those students who say, you know, they've worked really hard, they get themselves certified and they still can't get a job, they're real. I've done my own research and spoke to some of those same kids, some kids that went off to universities and get masters in hospitality industry and still can't find work. It's something that we find that we will not accept at all. And there will be a more stern approach to this. Now, as I said in my delivery in Parliament, I'd rather the collaborative carrot approach to this, but the government is willing to take the necessary steps to, forgive me, the government will take the necessary steps to make sure that Caymanians get their opportunity. So here's the simple point. Again, I go back to the reopening. Why did we reopen? We reopened to take this risk so that Caymanians can get jobs. If the Caymanians are not going to get the jobs, what's the point of allowing this benefit? So we didn't do it for work permit holders. That's a simple point. Now, granted, the industry does have a lot of positions, and there may be, and there's no true way to quantify this breakdown well enough, because not enough studies have been done over past administrations to understand the job market. So we'll be doing a whole lot of that as well, analyzing who is trained, who has what work permits have been filed, where have they been filed, and keep a constant track to see if we can transition, get what do you call when you're leaving a job, you do a report to explain why you left and what have you. I think it's an exit report.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do, once we find out the Caymanians are no longer in the industry, particularly those who come through our educational programs, can you come back to the ministry and explain what happened? So we can find triggers if there's a bad apple or a bad a partner out there who are not really giving our people a chance, and we start to see commonalities in a particular area, then we will send the enforcement arm in there to investigate further. I think it just has to be the only thing we can do here, because the industry is going to push back. They're accustomed to the norm, which is the free-flowing attitude of, I can get labor from anywhere. It doesn't really matter if I get a Caymanian or not. And we've took the opposite approach. So we're getting blamed. Oh, the PAC administration does not want to give us the labor that we need. Now we have the opposition jumping in their bandwagon saying we need to open up the work permit regime, which is quite disappointing that the former premier would say such a thing like that. in these times, but that's what they said. But we're going to hold our position, and eventually they will understand that this is the people's will. Now, I'm trying to do everything I can, as you know, Dr. Roy. I'm a pretty strong-headed young man. My mother is Donna Bryan, and I can be stubborn sometimes. But I'm trying to let them understand we can do this in collaboration. We want the same thing. Your hotel cannot do well 50 years from now when the people of this country has been pushed so far down, the crime starts to rise, ghettos start to be built. You're not going to like it because your $1 billion investment is not going to be a safe place for people to visit. So you have to buy into this idea now. It may not be a part of your strategy, but you have to buy in because you are in a land of the people of the Cayman Islands.
There's just one thing. It won't take 50 years from now for that to happen. That could happen in as little as 5 years from now. And I want to say this too. I listened intently to the Premier's strategic policy statement, and I'm impressed. I was impressed. I was impressed with his delivery. I saw the sincerity in what he was saying, and I also saw the support of his cabinet. So I'm asking you to take the message to him from me, to tell him that I congratulate him, his leadership, because while he was the mouthpiece on that particular occasion, I know that he had the input and support of the minister. So I want to commend you all on that. I want to get a hard copy of that speech because I'm doing a work now that I want to quote bits and pieces from it. I really, it's the first time in a long time that I have heard something so convincing, and I've listened for the past 4 or 5 years. I've listened for the past 4 or 5 years, and I have never heard anything to come up to that. I like the fact that it came from his heart, and I wish him and his cabinet well. And I have great expectations, and I don't want to be like Miss Havisham in the Charles Dickens story of the same name. I would like to think.
Well, Dr. Ra, I'll say this again. Thank you so much on behalf of my colleagues for your confidence and what you've heard, and I'll definitely pass on that message to the Premier.
This is a chance for us to get it right. This is a chance for us to get it right, and I'm not high profile any longer, but I'm rooting. I'm rooting for you all, and I'm encouraging you because I like what I hear and I like what I see. And the final point I wish to make on this is that I take your point also, and that's a good approach, that it has to be collaborative. It has to be collaborative. It has to involve CETA and the hoteliers especially, and all these people, the restaurateurs. Together, this can work. It cannot work in any other way. And you made a great observation, which is an observation that I have and that many people have. When tourists come, the common sentiment or a common question is, where are the Caymanians? Where are the locals? With all due respect, years ago, Caymanians dominated the industry. At that time, it may not have been as large as it is now, but Caymanians dominated the industry from the lowest position right up to the highest. When we get to certain places, it seems there's a reluctance, and this is what the students told me. Back of house, yeah, they'll fill that with Caymanians, but when it comes to front of house, they are reluctant, and I don't know why they bring these. Well, I don't want to get off on my tangent because they always accuse me. I don't know why they bring these kind of antiquated sentiments here, because the time for that has now passed, and we have capable people. I would just like to see them get a chance. The hospitality industry is behind in this, It doesn't happen to the same extent in the banking industry and the finance industry and the accounting, It's the hospitality industry is
I
veiled
agree.
in the field, sticking out like a sore thumb.
Mr.
Well,
Ken.
well, Dr. Roy, if I could, I was about to say a point about your. Thank you so much on behalf of the PAC administration for your observations to what the Honorable Premier delivered. But I want to say that there's a level of hope from us for you to help us with this transition and educate, because you're an educator, which is, you know, that this transition from what we perceive as a wrong structure on how employment is done to the right way for the best interests of our people. Now, there will be pushback and there will be naysayers and there will be people who try to mix the messages and sell it to say that this is going to harm us, because they will try to downplay it, disguised with doom and gloom, rather than the truth of it, where it's going to benefit the people. And as an educator, I need you to help with that on a constant basis as we transition, because every transition goes through its periods. So we need to convince our people, listen, you have to do your part. Don't listen to the naysayers, stay focused, go out there and represent us well. And when those persons start to say stuff like, oh, the Caymanians need experience. First, it was they need to be educated. And when they get educated, they need to be experienced. And oh, they don't have this particular type of experience. We need you on the battlefield explaining that those things are sometimes just red herrings, not to hire our people. Another hurdle to try to get more Caymanians to be attracted to that is the government's policy on minimum wage. So that is a hurdle from people jumping in, and we plan to address that in the new year so more people are attracted to it, along with those gratuities once we get the numbers back up. So thank you again for that.
Sir, I want to say something that I really, really believe in, and it is something that I've given a lot of thought to. I think the product can be improved. I think what we need to do is what I call invest more in cultural sensitivity training, because it seems to me that there is a misunderstanding. People, particularly among the employers, they hire Caymanians and they don't really understand the Caymanian psyche. They really don't understand the Caymanian expectation. And they talk about, oh, these people are they have a sense of entitlement. That is misunderstood. It's not a sense of entitlement. They have a sense of expectation that when they are placed in a position and they perform, that they are going to get recognized. And that recognition may not necessarily be in a salary, but it is in upward mobility, with all the challenges that upward mobility comes from. So if you have someone who begin at the bottom, back of house, and they show interest and aptitude, there is nothing wrong with moving them up, giving them experience in other departments. And so I'm going to suggest to you, Honorable Minister, that what you might want to impress upon the people in CETA is that some of them go through cultural sensitivity training so that they can understand what I call the Caymanian psyche. Because as I read and listen, I see that there is a misunderstanding. Many of these people come here with attitudes and think because they've been here for 10 years, they know the Caymanians. Not so. Nothing can be further from the truth, because they have made no attempt to understand and to learn the Caymanian psyche. Caymanians are not unreasonable people. They're also people who are capable of learning the most complex tasks. We don't want no more than we have people who left here and in a few years commanded some of the largest behemoths that ever sailed on the seas, carrying dangerous cargoes without an accident. So if they could, and these people are their progeny. The products now in the tourism industry are the progeny of some of these people. So therefore the same qualities exist. But it is sometimes a lack of misunderstanding, because they come with attitudes that are imported, which they don't want to change. And they sell the Caymanians short and talk about, well, they don't want to work, they don't want to work. They investigate into the circumstances. I mean, we have to be
Oh, well,
reasonable.
Dr. Roy, I do agree with you about the sensitivity and the cultural differences, and we'll be working on that psychological element of it, which also allows us to expose the employer. The employer needs to have a better understanding. So I agree with you on that.
Yes, and you can hear the passion in Roy's voice, and I know that he has so much to say. But we want to have some more discussion on a different on some other areas of this. I do believe that we need to work together, and as a business owner, I look at both sides of the coin, and we've said it
Yes.
before. Government is not in the business of recruiting. No, they're not a recruitment firm. Government is supposed to establish the foundation, the policies to allow recruiting to be done properly and to look over the interest of the people. And I think that as a business owner, you shouldn't tell me who to hire. You should tell me, okay, where I can find people who have the skills, or you can talk about training. And so therefore, it's a journey that we have to take together, not only the government, but also, experienced people like Dr. Roy, and the business people who come here with an investment. They want to make sure that they get the best performance for their business. So the question I wanted to talk about, to bring up, was we have hotels catering to high net worth individuals. And so therefore, when a hotel owner comes here and says, well, I have a 5-star hotel. When my customer walks in and pay $1,000 a night for a room, they have to get the best service. And we know that there aren't those people here with those skills. How do we get our people eventually in those roles? That business owner who owns that 5-star hotel will be comfortable with having Caymans in his industry.
Well, Ralph, I think that first thing you need to start off with was going away from the fallacy of what you just said. Because what you just said is you can't find Caymans like that here. That's rubbish. The fact is you have not looked for them. You have not helped develop them. You have not bring them out of their shell. Why is it that me, a young Caymanian, with just bubbly personality, became a television reporter and now a minister of the country? Nothing special about me. Just somebody who cared enough to say, for instance, April Cumming, young man, I see something in you. Come here, let me teach you a little something. And they developed me when much of society gave up on me. Somebody cared. The businesses have to care. You have just as much to lose in respect to your business. If Caymanians are not successful, you have to play your part. And the simple fact is, we will hold our position until you understand that. If you don't get it, then maybe it's not the best place for you because you're in it for the short-term gain rather than the long-term sustainability of our nation. We're not just here to keep another term of 4 years of the same old status quo. We're here to make sure that every one of our great grandchildren can remember that there was a country called the Cayman Islands, not just an island in the Caribbean. And this is the way that we all know has to be done. The industry knows themselves. They know what they do. They know that, if I was in my own country, I would like to see my people prosper. And I will go the extra mile for my people. Well, the Caymanian people are my people, and they sent me here to hold this position on their behalf. Because if we do not allow this industry to prosper for them, then we ain't doing our job. So you need to put your investment in. Granted, they make a lot of money in this country. There's a reason why investors spend hundreds of millions of dollars to put cement in the ground on our beautiful beaches. So that same investment you put it in your heart and find our Caymanian young men and women and get to know who they are. Dr. Roy just highlighted a very key point, which is the psyche of the Caymanian people. If you get to understand them, go into their neighborhoods, understand what they like. What you're expecting to do is to bring a mentality into your product that you're offering the tourists and you're expecting the Caymanian to conform to it. Are you selling a commercialized brand, or is that commercialized brand Caymanized? That's the problem. It's not. So hypothetically, I love the Ritz. I think it's one of the best brands in the world. But the Ritz can't just be the Ritz. It has to be the Caymanian Ritz with a flavor and a taste of that, with the same high quality taste and stature that is offered for the $1,000 a night. But there's nobody can tell me that a young Kenyan girl or young Kenyan boy cannot deliver the same quality high end as anybody else in the rest of the world, whether it's the Philippines, Canada, UK, Africa, or anywhere else. The Caymanians are some of the smartest people in the world. You just have to invest in their development and understanding of the services that they offer.
Yes, you said it so clear. It's so clear. I take my hat off to you. And it's just to be given that chance. Just to be given
That's right.
that chance.
That's right. That's
And
right.
we have to work together. And I think the PAC government is on the right track. But you also need to surround yourselves with people who are thinking the same way as you and supporting you, because there are many people in this country who are happy to hear you say these things. And that's one of the reasons why we have the panel. So we can talk about these difficult topics. And we really don't care what other people say. Sometimes we try to be even, unbiased, but we want people to speak their minds and speak from their hearts and souls. And that's what it's all about. And if you mean well for yourself and your country, that's fine. If you're just looking out for yourself, well, it's all selfish. So if you give people a chance, they will surprise you.
There is, certainly in the circles I have moved, there are a great number of people who welcome this position. And there are those who are saying, we realize that PAC is the last chance to get this right, because we have been disappointed and let down so many times before that we realize this is the last chance. And so if we don't get it right now, who knows what is going to happen? And that's what I admire about the pluck and what has been expressed so far and the actions that the PAC have taken, because it seems that they themselves recognize what they're up against. And of course, as you have said, Minister Bryant, you're going to get pushback. And as my host has said, it has to be a collaborative effort, and there is nothing to prevent CETA, the political directorate, the arm of government that controls these things, work, and the work permit board and all this, from getting together and defining a course and a path to stay on, that it can be a victory for all. Everyone can come away feeling that they have achieved their objective, because
exactly.
I see no point in saying Cayman is doing well in tourism if 75% of the people in the industry, and I know we can't produce enough employees to fill every spot because our population is not that large, but certainly we can have enough positions there to say that this is overwhelmingly a Caymanian organization, because we see by the number of staff and the positions they hold. So no one can convince me that they're going to need to, but we have to bring in all these people from this place and the next place when you have Caymanians unemployed. And Minister, we have to find a way. That's why I'm telling you that these employers have to make a greater effort at understanding the Caymanian psyche. Oh, Caymanians are lazy. They don't want to work. They don't want to accept this minimum wage. They don't want to accept that minimum wage. They don't want to work on Sundays. They don't want to work. A lot of that. I'm not saying that there are not some cases, but a lot of that is bunkum. The Caymanian people are you're not telling me, because I am one, and I am not unique. Yes. And exceptional in that regard. There are others just like me, hundreds, yes, if not thousands of them, just waiting to be given a chance. Training,
Dr. Roy,
training,
Dr. Roy,
experience.
I want to say this, Dr. Roy. There's two ways for this to happen. One, we can do it together, industry, government, and stakeholders. And we can, like you said, find a course, chart it, and everybody be successful. Or the industry cannot conform to what the way forward, and then there be a struggle. Within that struggle, as a political person yourself and or being in politics before, you understand that the players will do everything that they can to try to change it back to the way it once was, the way they want it, the way they like it. If there's people who are listening to me, those who are vested in keeping the status quo are watching this show tonight. I can promise you that. Those who are interested in changing it for the better and believes in the PAC administration's viewpoint, I need you to be vocal. You have to speak up. They have to understand. No longer can you say or I say, oh, we support you in silence. They will send their troops out. They will send their antics out. They will come with money. They will come after the politicians. They will try to find weak parts of our fence and of our position and tear it apart. It's so disappointing to hear the former premier for 8 years speak at the first opportunity we had to hold firm and getting Caymanians back in. And he says in his contribution, it's time to open back up the work permits. What is he talking about? And they have already started to make ground with the opposition, who it represents Caymanians as well. So we, the people out there who wants this. Now, if everybody doesn't want it, I don't expect you to speak. But the country did select this government in respect of these policies on our platforms. I beg of you, do not make them gain ground. They need to hear you. They need to know that you're out there and you support this government's position on this. Now, you may not always support the government on everything, but if this is a process that you like in respect to Caymanizing our workforce, giving Caymanians opportunity, stand firm on that whenever they come and they start to undermine us, stand firm and let them know we no longer want that. Because we are there for you, we'll continue to fight, but sometimes the battle is in the public domain on behalf of the people. They will eventually get it. Once the Caymanian people stand firm, they did that in this election, so much so that they had marches refusing to accept the last administration. And we must do that and stand firm in respect to the labor force of this transition. So I ask you to encourage, continue to educate Dr. Roy. So many people look up to you. They may not say, well, I don't trust Kenneth, but they trust Dr. Roy. It's a different generation. Maybe my generations listen to me, but we need all generations at the table together to stand firm in respect to this transition. And it can work if everybody just does it together. But if those who don't want to do it and don't want to conform for other reasons other than the benefit of our people, then they will have to understand this is the will of the people. So I ask you to continue to push that narrative.
Okay, before we've done the last couple of minutes, but before I give you a chance to wrap up, Mr. Kenneth, Roy, give your final thoughts, please.
No, I just want to encourage the minister, to stay on the course he's on, and to encourage his premier and his cabinet, to stay on the course, not to be swayed. Of course, there's going to be pushback, but you also have to consider this, and I don't have to remind the minister of this. He's been in there long enough. Know that the opposition, it's not their business to make the government look good. They're going to try to make you look as bad as they can. But in the end, what you said is correct. If the people wanted them, you would not have been in the position you are now. It would have been them there. Therefore, they need to be reminded that they were rejected. And now it is their turn. Since they didn't have the formula, it is their turn to look and learn from those who have it.
I agree with you on that.
But this is not the time for disunity. This is the time, because they are going to be the beneficiaries of things. So when they go well, they won't have anything to worry about. But if the society crumbles because of their lack of cooperation, or their absolute conviction that they want to tear it down, then they're going to have to contend with a dysfunctional Caymanian society, just like the rest of us. So it behoves them to say, we see merit in what you're doing, and we are going to give you support.
Kenneth?
Agreed.
Minister Kenneth, your final words, please.
Ralph, just to say thank you to you. Thank you to Dr. Roy for his input and intellect and understanding, particularly in respect to the political arm, yes, and the biggest social concept. And Ralph, so important as a person in the media to continue to have these discussions. It's part of the transition into the new way forward, because without dialogue, we cannot break down these problems and have the solution. So thank you so much. I want to say before I go, that folks, we're in a pandemic. And most importantly to this government is the safety of the people. Please, I beg you to get vaccinated. If you can't, for whatever reason, which I do encourage you, I'm vaccinated. Funny enough, I got my booster just tonight. Just got my booster tonight. I just came straight from getting the booster to be on the show. Get vaccinated if you can. If you can't, try to eat healthy, less stressed on your body, and be safe as much as you possibly can. It is also the Christmas period. I just want to say happy holidays. Feliz Navidad, Maligaya and Pasco to all my Filipino persons and all the Spanish persons, and obviously all my Caymanians. It's a really pleasure, and I'm so happy to be on here, and I'm happy to come back again at any time to continue to deliver on behalf of the PAC administration with our plans for the future.
I have to try to get a hard copy of that strategic policy statement delivered by your premier.
I'll get it for you, my brother.
If you want to do me a favor, you can reserve a copy of me. I'll come by the parliament to pick it up. I would love that. I would
love get it for you. I promise.
Some of his statements into a book that I'm writing.
Okay. Well, on behalf of yes,
I was just going to say that I'll provide it for him and hopefully get the premier to sign it so you can put it in your storage.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
On behalf of my co-host Roy, I want to say thank you very much, Minister, for coming on. We invite you here again. We have lots to do, lots of work to do. And communication is the key. And I think, like you mentioned, that we have to get the word out, what your plan is. And I encourage you to come back here again and use similar platforms to get the message out. We know not everybody listens to the same platform all the time. So it's good to get the message to everyone. And I think that you have more support for your deeds than you and your works than you know. Thank you very much. And to all our listeners, thanks for taking the time. Don't forget to like our page and share the live every time. On behalf of our crew, take care and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.